The metallic click of the deadbolt sliding into place echoed through the empty diner like a gunshot. Clara Evans froze, her hand still gripping the damp cleaning rag, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. She knew that sound. She had heard it 3 times before in the last 2 months, each time followed by Brad Gower's oily smile and his voice dropping to that false friendly whisper that made her skin crawl. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the cook had already left. Tonight, the last customer had walked out 10 minutes ago, his heavy boots crunching across the gravel parking lot before the rumble of his motorcycle faded into the November darkness. Tonight, she was completely alone with her manager. Brad stood by the front door, his back to her, one hand still resting on the lock. The neon sign outside buzzed and flickered, casting red and blue shadows across his clean-cut profile. He was 45, married, sang in the church choir every Sunday morning. To everyone in Tulsa, he was a pillar of the community, a successful regional franchise manager who had turned 3 failing diners into profitable locations. But Clara knew what lived behind that smile. She had felt his fingers brush against her lower back when he walked past. She had heard his comments about her uniform being too tight, too loose, just right. She had seen the way he dismissed the other waitresses early on nights when she was scheduled to close. The lights in the dining room suddenly went dark. Only the kitchen fluorescents remained, throwing harsh white light across the counter where Clara stood, making her feel exposed, spotlit. Brad turned slowly, and in the semi-darkness, his smile looked different. Predatory. Certain. Clara Evans was 23 years old. She was a nursing student at Tulsa Community College, carrying 18 credit hours and working 50-hour weeks to pay for it. 3 weeks ago, her landlord had evicted her from the studio apartment she could no longer afford. Since then, she had been sleeping in her 2003 Honda Civic in the diner's back parking lot, showering at the college gym before her morning classes, keeping her textbooks and clean uniforms folded in the trunk. She had exactly $47 in her checking account. Tonight's tips, sitting in the front pocket of her apron, were supposed to buy gas and 2 days of groceries. She could not afford to lose this job. Brad Gower knew that. He had known it for 3 months, ever since she had come to him crying, asking for an advance on her paycheck to cover her rent. He had said no, but he had started paying attention. Before this moment turned into something Clara would never forget, before the glass shattered and the night exploded into violence and rescue, there had been one other person in the diner. One other witness to the trap being set. Tell us, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or state in the comments. Because what happened in Tulsa that November night, what Clara survived and what came crashing through those windows, that kind of brotherhood exists everywhere. Maybe it exists in your town too. So tell us where you are. Let us know you are out there. Because this story, this is for everyone who has ever felt trapped, ever felt powerless, ever thought no one was coming. Share your location. Be part of this. Brad walked towards the counter, his footsteps deliberate on the worn linoleum. Clara backed up instinctively, her hip hitting the coffee station. The pot was still half full, still hot. She could smell the burnt edges of the brew, bitter and dark. Clara, Brad said, his voice soft, reasonable. We need to talk about the register. There was a shortage tonight. $40. There had been no shortage. Clara had counted twice, the way she always did. But she knew this game. He had played it before with other girls. Accuse them of stealing, make them afraid, then offer to forget about it if they were nice, if they understood, if they did not make a fuss. I counted 3 times, Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. The register was perfect. I counted 2, Brad said, still walking closer. And I found 40 missing. Now I like you, Clara. I do not want to involve the police. I do not want to ruin your future. You are a smart girl. You understand how these things work." He was 10 feet away now. 8 feet. Clara could smell his cologne, cheap and cloying, mixing with the stale tobacco smell that clung to his clothes, even though he swore he had quit smoking. She glanced towards the back exit. Brad followed her gaze and smiled wider. "I locked that one too," he said. "For safety. You know how dangerous this neighborhood gets after midnight. I am just looking out for you." But 90 minutes earlier, at 11 o'clock, when the rain had just started to fall and the Route 66 diner was nearly empty, Clara had not felt trapped. She had felt something close to normal, close to okay, even though her feet ached and her lower back was screaming and she knew she would be sleeping in her car again. That was when he walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and Clara looked up from wiping down table 6. Her first thought was immediate and instinctive. Danger. The man who entered was enormous, easily 6'2", built like he had been assembled from engine parts and bad intentions. He was bald, his scalp gleaming under the diner's fluorescent lights, and a thick black beard covered half his face. His leather vest was worn and patched, the back displaying a skull with angel wings and the words Grim Reaper's MC in Gothic script. Tattoos covered both arms, disappearing under his black t-shirt. On his neck, just visible above his collar, Clara could see a single word inked in Old English. Silence. He moved to the darkest booth in the back corner, the one with the torn vinyl seat that no one ever wanted, and sat down with his back to the wall. His eyes scanned the diner once, methodical, taking in every exit, every window, every person. When his gaze passed over Clara, she felt herself go still, like a rabbit spotting a wolf. Brad Gower, watching from the manager's office, felt his jaw tighten. He hated bikers. They never tipped well. They made the other customers nervous, and they had a habit of seeing things they should not see. Clara approached the booth carefully, her notepad ready, her smile automatic and professional, despite the fear curling in her stomach. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice coming out steadier than she expected. The biker looked up at her. His eyes were gray, the color of winter sky, and startlingly clear in his weathered face. He nodded once. Clara poured the coffee, her hand shaking just slightly, and the biker noticed. He noticed everything. He saw the bruise on her wrist, fading now but still visible, finger-shaped. He saw the way her uniform hung loose on her frame, like she had lost weight recently and fast. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that came from sleeping in cars and skipping meals. And he saw something else, something that made him watch her more carefully as she refilled his cup without being asked, as she brought him cream even though he had not requested it, as she smiled and said, "Let me know if you need anything else." Kindness, genuine kindness, offered to a man who looked like a nightmare. The biker's name was Elias Thorne, though no one had called him that in 15 years. On the road, in the clubhouse, among the brothers of the Grim Reaper's MC, he was Wraith. He was 48 years old, a former Army Ranger who had done 2 tours in Afghanistan, recon work that left scars on his soul that would never fully heal. He had been the Grim Reaper's road captain for 12 years, responsible for planning routes, managing logistics, keeping the Brotherhood moving and safe. His bike was an Indian chieftain dark horse, matte black with crimson accents, and it was parked just outside the diner's front window where he could see it. Wraith had a sister. Had. Past tense, though it killed him to think of her that way. Her name had been Sarah, and she had been a waitress too, working nights at a truck stop outside Amarillo to pay for dental hygiene school. Her manager had been clean-cut, married, respected. He had locked the doors after closing. He had cornered her in the back office. He had told her that if she reported him, no one would believe her, and she would lose everything. Sarah had not reported him. She had quit, moved back home, stopped talking, stopped sleeping. 6 months later, she swallowed a bottle of pills and left a note that said only, "I am so tired." That was 8 years ago. Wraith still carried her picture in his wallet, tucked behind his military ID. And when he looked at Clara Evans, trying so hard to smile through her exhaustion, serving him coffee with hands that trembled, he saw Sarah. He saw his failure to protect her. He saw a second chance. So when Clara brought him his check at 11:45, when Brad Gower was in the office counting the register for the third time, and the cook had already left through the back door, Wraith watched carefully. He saw the way Clara glanced towards the office, saw the fear flash across her face. He saw Brad emerge and tell the cook to go home early, that he would help Clara finish closing. He saw Clara's shoulders tense. And when Clara came back to collect payment, when she stood beside his booth and said quietly, "Thank you for your patience," Wraith saw her hand shake as she placed the receipt on the table. That was when Clara made her decision. She had tried calling her best friend from college earlier that evening, had asked if she could crash on her couch tonight, just tonight, because she needed to feel safe. But the call had gone to voicemail. She had tried asking the cook to stay late, had invented a reason about needing help moving boxes in the storage room, but he had shrugged and said he had to get home to his wife. She had looked at the phone hanging on the wall behind the counter and thought about calling the police. But what would she say? "My manager is giving me a bad feeling? He has not done anything yet, but I am scared?" They would laugh. Or worse, they would call Brad and ask him about it, and then he would fire her, and she would have nothing. But this biker, this terrifying man with his silence and his scars and his brotherhood vest, maybe he was different. Maybe he had a daughter. Maybe he would understand. Maybe he was her only chance. Clara picked up the pen that Wraith had left on the table. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. She flipped the receipt over, and on the blank white back, she wrote in small, desperate letters, "Help, back door locked." Then she placed the receipt on the table, on top of the $20 bill Wraith had left for a $6 meal, and she made herself look at him. She held his gray eyes for 3 seconds, then 4, then 5, longer than any waitress should look at any customer, long enough that Brad would notice if he was watching, long enough to send a message that transcended words. Wraith looked down at the receipt. He read the message. His expression did not change. He did not nod, did not speak, did not acknowledge the plea in any visible way. He simply stood up, picked up the $20, and walked toward the door. Clara's heart broke. He was leaving. He had read her message, and he was leaving anyway. And she was alone. And Brad was walking out of the office now with that smile, that horrible smile. And she had gambled everything on a stranger who looked dangerous and turned out to be just another man who did not care. The bell chimed as Wraith pushed open the door. The cold November rain hit him immediately, soaking into his leather vest. He walked to his bike, threw his leg over the seat, and started the engine. The Indian roared to life, a deep growl that echoed across the empty parking lot. Inside the diner, Brad Gower smiled and walked to the front door. He flipped the sign from open to closed, then turned the deadbolt with that metallic click that Clara would hear in her nightmares for years. Outside, Wraith's motorcycle engine grew quieter, then faded entirely as he rode away down Route 66, disappearing into the rain and darkness. Brad turned back to Clara. "Now," he said softly, "about that shortage." But Wraith had not left. He had coasted to a stop in the back parking lot, killed the engine, and dismounted in silence. The rain fell harder now, cold and relentless, soaking through his clothes as he moved through the shadows along the building's perimeter. He could see through the diner's windows, could see Brad walking toward Clara, could see her backing up against the counter. Wraith pulled his phone from his vest pocket. Water ran down the screen as he opened his contacts and selected a number labeled Reaper. The phone rang twice before a voice answered, gravelly and alert despite the late hour. "Wraith, what do you need?" "We have got a situation," Wraith said quietly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Route 66 diner on the highway. Young waitress being cornered by her manager. Doors are locked. She asked for help." There was a pause, then, "How many?" "Just me here now. But I am going to need the weight of the club behind this. He needs to understand what happens when you trap someone vulnerable." "We are 20 minutes out. Bishop will want details." "No time for details. She is in danger now. I am going in. Bring everyone." "Everyone?" "Everyone." Wraith ended the call and moved closer to the front of the building. Through the large plate glass windows, he could see Brad getting closer to Clara. He could see her grab the coffee pot, holding it like a weapon, her whole body shaking. Inside the diner, Brad was 6 feet away now, still smiling that reasonable smile. "You are being dramatic, Clara. I am just trying to help you. You are so stressed, so tired. Maybe what you need is someone to take care of you. Someone who understands how hard you work." "Stay away from me," Clara said, her voice breaking. The coffee pot felt heavy in her hand, but it was something. It was all she had. "I will throw this. I swear I will throw this." Brad laughed, a sound that made Clara's stomach turn. "Scream all you want, sweetheart. It is 1 a.m. The highway is empty. There is no one out there. No one is coming for you." That was when the glass exploded. The front window of the Route 66 diner, 8 feet tall and 12 feet wide, shattered into a million glittering diamonds as Wraith's boot came through it with the force of a battering ram. The sound was enormous, a crystalline detonation that filled the diner and sent shards flying across the floor like ice. Cold rain poured in through the destroyed window, and with it came Wraith. Heiss stepped through the wreckage, glass crunching under his boots, his massive frame silhouetted against the darkness outside. Water dripped from his beard, from his vest, from his clenched fists. His gray eyes locked on Brad Gower with an intensity that made the manager stumble backward, his confidence evaporating like steam. "You were wrong," Wraith said, his voice low and cold and absolutely certain. "Someone did come." Clara stood frozen, the coffee pot still in her hand, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. The biker had come back. He had heard her. He had believed her. He had come back. Brad tried to recover, tried to summon some authority. "You just destroyed private property. I am calling the police. You are going to jail." Wraith took another step forward. "Call them. Please. I would love to explain to them why you locked all the doors with a young woman inside, why the lights are off, why she is holding a weapon and shaking." "This is none of your business," Brad said, but his voice was shaking now, too. "This is between me and my employee." "It became my business when she asked for help," Wraith said. "And when she asks for help, I answer. That is what we do." "We?" Brad asked, and something in his tone suggested he already feared the answer. That was when the parking lot lit up like daylight. High beams, dozens of them. 40 Indian and Harley motorcycles came roaring into the Route 66 diner's parking lot in a coordinated wave, their headlights cutting through the rain like search beacons. The sound was overwhelming, a symphony of thunder that shook the building's walls and made the remaining windows rattle in their frames. They came from the highway, from the side roads, from the darkness itself, forming a perfect semicircle around the diner's front entrance with military precision. The Grim Reaper's MC had arrived. 40 men and 3 women dismounted in unison, their leather vests gleaming wet in the headlights, their faces hard and purposeful. They did not rush. They did not shout. They simply walked forward, boots splashing through puddles, forming ranks behind Wraith like an army behind its general. At the front walked Bishop, the club's president. He was 62 years old, a Vietnam veteran with a gray beard that reached mid-chest and eyes that had seen too much death to be impressed by civilian threats. Beside him was Iron, the sergeant-at-arms, built like a tank and just as unstoppable, responsible for club security and discipline. They stopped at the shattered window, looking in at the scene before them. Brad Gower, pale and sweating, backed into a corner. Clara Evans, still holding the coffee pot, tears streaming down her face. Wraith, standing between them like a wall. Bishop spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Someone want to tell me why we rode 20 minutes in the rain?" Wraith reached into his vest and pulled out the receipt Clara had given him. Even wet, the message was still legible. "Help! Back door locked." He held it up so Bishop could see, then turned it toward Brad. "This young woman asked for help," Wraith said. "She served me with kindness when she did not have to. She treated me like a human being. And her manager here decided tonight was the night to make his move." Brad tried one more time, his voice desperate now. "This is insane. I did not do anything. I was just closing the register. She is lying. She has been stealing from me and now she is trying to cover it up." Clara found her voice then, shaking but clear. "He has been harassing me for 3 months. He touches me when no one is looking. He makes comments about my body. He dismisses the other staff early and locks the doors. Tonight he said there was a shortage in the register, but there was not. He said he would forget about it if I was nice to him. He said no one would believe me because he is married and goes to church, and I am just a broke college student sleeping in her car." The parking lot went silent except for the rain and the idling engines. 43 members of the Grim Reaper's MC stared at Brad Gower, and in their eyes was judgment. Bishop stepped through the broken window, glass crunching under his boots. He walked slowly toward Brad, who pressed himself against the wall like he could disappear into it. "I am a grandfather," Bishop said quietly. "I have 3 granddaughters. One of them is 22. She works at a coffee shop while she finishes college. And every time she leaves for a night shift, I worry. I worry that some piece of trash in a position of authority is going to see her vulnerability and decide to exploit it. I worry that she will be too afraid to call for help. I worry that no one will be there when she needs them." He stopped inches from Brad's face. "Tonight," Bishop continued, "my worry was justified. But tonight someone was here. Tonight she asked for help and we answered. Do you understand what that means?" Brad did not answer. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face, his whole body trembling. "It means," Bishop said, "that you picked the wrong night, the wrong woman, the wrong witness. Because when you trap someone who has served a member of the Grim Reaper's MC with genuine kindness, when you lock the doors and turn off the lights and think you are invisible to the world, you are not invisible. You are seen." And we remember. Iron stepped forward then, producing a set of zip ties from his vest. "Police are 3 minutes out. We called them when Wraith called us. They are going to find you restrained. They are going to find a witness testimony from every person in this parking lot, and they are going to find a confession." "I did not confess to anything," Brad stammered. "You will," Iron said simply, "because the alternative is we let the brothers outside decide your punishment. And trust me, jail is going to feel like mercy compared to what they have in mind for predators." 2 members stepped forward and took Brad by the arms. They were not rough, but they were not gentle either. They zip-tied his wrists behind his back and walked him outside into the rain, into the center of that semicircle of headlights and judgment. Wraith turned to Clara, who had finally set down the coffee pot and was leaning against the counter, her legs shaking too hard to support her weight. He pulled off his leather vest, the Grim Reaper's colors, and walked over to her. "You are safe now," he said, draping the vest around her shoulders. It was warm from his body heat, and it smelled like leather and rain and something indefinable that meant safety. "No one is going to hurt you." Clara looked up at him, this massive, bearded stranger who had come back when no one else would, and she started to cry. Not silent tears, but gut-wrenching sobs, the kind that came from 3 months of fear and exhaustion, and sleeping in cars and being afraid every single day that this would be the night Brad finally went too far. Wraith did not try to comfort her with words. He just stood there, a solid presence, and let her cry. Outside, police sirens cut through the sound of rain and motorcycles. 2 squad cars pulled into the parking lot, their light bars flashing red and blue across the assembled bikers. The officers got out carefully, hands near their weapons, assessing the situation. Bishop walked forward to meet them, his hands visible and empty. "Officers, we have a situation here that requires your immediate attention. This man," he gestured to Brad, still zip-tied in the center of the parking lot, "locked a young woman in this diner after closing and attempted to assault her. We responded to her call for help and have detained him until you arrived. We have 43 witnesses and physical evidence." The senior officer, a sergeant in his 50s, looked from Bishop to the broken window to Brad to the assembled Grim Reapers. He had been on the Tulsa police force for 28 years. He knew the Grim Reapers' reputation. They did not start trouble, but they finished it. And they did not lie about things like this. "Someone want to tell me who called for help?" the sergeant asked. Clara stepped out through the broken window, still wrapped in Wraith's vest, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "I did. I gave a note to him," she pointed to Wraith, "asking for help because my manager had locked all the doors, and I knew what was going to happen. He came back. He broke the window to get to me before it was too late." The sergeant looked at Brad, at his guilty expression, and his wet clothes, and his defeated posture. Then he looked at the diner, at the locked doors and the darkness inside. He had seen this before. He knew how these things went. He knew the statistics about women who worked night shifts, about men in positions of power, about how many never reported because they knew they would not be believed. "All right," the sergeant said. "Bradley Gower, you are under arrest for attempted sexual assault, unlawful imprisonment, and abuse of authority. You have the right to remain silent." As the sergeant read Brad his rights and loaded him into the squad car, Bishop walked over to Clara. "You did the right thing asking for help," he said. "That took courage, more courage than most people have." "I did not know if he would come back," Clara said, her voice still shaking. "I thought I was alone." "You are never alone," Bishop said. "Not anymore. The Grim Reapers protect those who serve with honor and kindness. You served our brother with both. That makes you family." From his pocket, he pulled an envelope, thick and heavy. "This is from the club fund, $12,000. It should cover your student debt and 1 year of rent. Consider it a scholarship from people who believe in protecting the vulnerable." Clara stared at the envelope like it was a hallucination. $12,000. Her entire student loan balance. A year of not sleeping in her car, of not wondering where the next meal would come from, of being able to focus on school instead of survival. "I cannot," she started. "You can," Bishop said firmly. "And you will. Because you earned it. Not just tonight, but every night you showed up and worked hard and treated people with kindness even when you had every reason to be bitter. This is not charity. This is recognition." Iron stepped forward then, handing Clara a business card. "We also own a bar on the east side. We need a manager. Better hours, better pay, safer environment. If you want it, it is yours. No pressure. But know that you have options." Clara looked at the card, at the envelope, at the 43 members of the Grim Reaper's MC standing in the rain to make sure she was safe. These men and women who society feared, who looked like nightmares, who had just given her back her life. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt desperately inadequate. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for seeing me." Wraith, who had been standing quietly to the side, spoke then. His voice was rough with old grief. 8 years ago, my sister was in your position. She was a waitress. Her manager did to her what yours tried to do to you. But she did not have anyone watching. She did not have anyone to ask for help. She did not make it. He met Clara's eyes, and she saw the pain there, the guilt, the determination. "Her name was Sarah," Wraith continued, "and every time I see someone in danger, every time I see someone vulnerable being targeted by someone powerful, I think about her. I think about how no one was there. So I make sure I am here. I make sure someone is always here. Tonight, I was here for you, and I would do it again 1,000 times." Clara stepped forward and hugged him. It was awkward, this young woman embracing this massive biker in the rain. But it was also the most genuine human connection either of them had, felt in a long time. "You saved me," Clara whispered. "You saved my life." "You saved yourself," Wraith said. "You asked for help. That is the hardest part. I just answered." The police finished processing the scene, taking statements from Clara and multiple Grim Reaper's members, photographing the broken window and the locked doors, and the evidence of Brad's intentions. Brad Gower sat in the back of the squad car, his head down, his life as he knew it completely over. By morning, his mugshot would be on the local news. By afternoon, the franchise would fire him. By the end of the week, his wife would know everything. His church would know everything. Everyone who had thought he was respectable and trustworthy would know what he really was. Clara stood in the parking lot, wrapped in a leather vest that smelled like safety, holding an envelope that meant freedom, surrounded by 43 bikers who had come because one of them had heard a cry for help and decided it mattered. She thought about how close she had come. How if she had not written that note? How if Wraith had not been paying attention? How if he had decided she was not his problem? She would have been alone with Brad in that locked diner. She thought about what would have happened, what he would have taken from her, how it would have changed her forever. But that was not what happened. What happened was she asked for help, and someone answered. What happened was she showed kindness to a stranger, and that kindness came back to save her life. What happened was the system failed, but the Brotherhood did not. As the police cars pulled away with Brad Gower in custody, Bishop gathered the club. "All right, brothers and sisters, job done. Let us get out of this rain." But before they mounted their bikes, every single member walked past Clara. Some shook her hand, some nodded, some hugged her. Some just looked her in the eyes and let her see that they meant it when they said she was family now. The last to leave was Wraith. He held out his hand for his vest, and Clara reluctantly returned it, suddenly feeling exposed without its weight and warmth. "Keep it," Wraith said, seeing her expression. "You earned it. Besides, I have another at home." "I do not know how to thank you," Clara said. "You already did," Wraith said. "You poured my coffee without judging me. You refilled it without being asked. You treated me like a human being when most people cross the street to avoid me. That matters. That always matters. Do not ever lose that kindness, Clara. The world needs it." He walked to his bike, mounted it, and started the engine. The Indian roared to life, and one by one, the other 42 motorcycles started as well, a symphony of power and purpose that made the ground shake. Clara stood in the parking lot of the Route 66 diner, watching the taillights of the Grim Reaper's MC disappear down the highway into the rain. She looked down at the vest in her hands, at the skull with angel wings, at the words Grim Reaper's MC in Gothic script. She thought about what Bishop had said, about never being alone, about being family. For the first time in 3 months, Clara Evans did not feel afraid. For the first time in 3 months, she did not feel helpless. For the first time in 3 months, she felt seen, believed, protected. She pulled out her phone and opened the Uber app to get a ride to a hotel, a real hotel with a real bed and a door that locked from the inside. Tomorrow, she would deposit the envelope, pay off her student loans, and find an apartment. Tomorrow, she would call the bar and schedule an interview for the manager position. Tomorrow, she would start the process of rebuilding her life, of reclaiming what Brad Gower had tried to steal from her. But tonight, she just wanted to sleep somewhere safe. As she waited for her ride, Clara thought about the moment she had written that note, the terror and desperation she had felt, the gamble she had taken on a stranger who looked dangerous. She thought about Wraith reading it, about his face showing nothing, about how she had been sure he was abandoning her. And then she thought about the glass shattering, about him standing there in the rain, about him saying, "Someone did come." She thought about 43 motorcycles lighting up the night, about a grandfather talking about his granddaughters, about a man carrying his sister's ghost and turning his grief into protection for strangers. She thought, I prayed for an angel, I got a reaper instead, and that was exactly what I needed. 3 weeks later, Clara Evans walked into the Iron Horse Bar on Tulsa's east side for her first day as assistant manager. The owner, a quiet man named Marcus, who wore a Grim Reaper's vest, showed her around and explained the systems. The pay was $15 an hour, the staff was respectful, and there were 3 other employees on every shift. No one closed alone. Ever. Clara worked hard. She showed up early, stayed late when needed, and treated every customer with the same kindness she had shown Wraith that rainy November night. She got to know the regular bikers who came in, learned their stories, understood that most of them were veterans, fathers, grandfathers, people carrying their own scars and trying to do right by the world. And every Saturday at 7 p.m., like clockwork, Wraith came in for dinner. He always sat in the back booth with his back to the wall, always ordered the same thing, burger medium rare, fries, black coffee, and always left a $20 tip on a $15 meal. They did not talk much. Wraith was not a talker. But sometimes Clara would sit down across from him for a few minutes when the bar was quiet, and they would exist in comfortable silence. 2 people who had survived their own kinds of darkness and found something like peace on the other side. One Saturday evening, 6 months after the incident, Clara brought Wraith his coffee and found him looking at a photograph. It was worn and creased, clearly carried everywhere, clearly precious. A young woman smiled up from the image, dark-haired and kind-eyed, and heartbreakingly young. "Your sister?" Clara asked quietly. Wraith nodded. "Sarah. She would have been 34 next month." Clara sat down without asking. "Tell me about her." And Wraith did. He told Clara about Sarah's laugh, about how she wanted to be a dental hygienist so she could help kids not be afraid of the dentist the way she had been. He told Clara about how Sarah used to make elaborate birthday cakes for every member of their family, how she volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend, how she believed in seeing the good in everyone. He told Clara about how that belief had gotten Sarah hurt, how trusting the wrong person in the wrong situation had cost her everything, how he had not known until it was too late to save her. "I was deployed when it happened," Wraith said, his voice rough. "I was 12,000 miles away, and when I got the call, when they told me she was gone, I wanted to burn the world down. I wanted to hurt everyone who had failed her, but that would not have brought her back. So instead I made a promise. I promised that I would pay attention, that I would be the person who notices when someone needs help, that I would never walk past someone in danger and pretend I did not see. You kept that promise, Clara said. You saved me. Sarah saved you, Wraith corrected. Her death taught me to look. Her memory taught me to act. So when I saw you, when I saw how afraid you were, I saw her, and I refused to let it happen again. Clara reached across the table and put her hand over Wraith's. Then she is still saving people, through you. That is a beautiful legacy. Wraith looked at Clara for a long moment. This young woman who had survived her own nightmare and come out the other side still kind, still open, still willing to sit with a broken man and honor his grief. Then he smiled, small and sad and grateful. Yeah, he said. I think it is. That night, after Wraith left and Clara locked up the Iron Horse bar with 3 other staff members present, she drove to her apartment, a 1-bedroom place with good locks and a balcony that overlooked the city. And she did something she had not done in months. She called her mother in Oklahoma City. They had not spoken much since Clara had dropped out of the community college to work full-time at the diner. Her mother had been disappointed, worried, convinced Clara was throwing her life away. "Mom," Clara said when her mother answered, "I need to tell you what happened. I need you to know that I almost lost everything, but I was saved by the most unexpected people, and I need you to know that I am okay now. I am more than okay. I am safe." Clara told her mother everything, about Brad Gower, about the locked doors, about the note and the window shattering and the 43 motorcycles in the rain, about the envelope full of money and the job and the new life she was building, about Wraith and Sarah and brotherhood and the difference between looking dangerous and being dangerous. Her mother listened, and when Clara finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then, "I want to meet these people who saved my daughter." "Okay," Clara said, smiling. "I think that can be arranged." 2 months later, Clara's mother drove up from Oklahoma City, and Clara brought her to the Iron Horse bar on a Saturday evening. Wraith was there in his usual booth, and Clara introduced them. "This is the man who saved me," Clara said simply. Clara's mother looked at Wraith, at his size, at his tattoos, at his leather vest and his battle-worn face, and Clara could see her trying to reconcile her preconceptions with reality. Then her mother did something Clara had not expected. She hugged him. "Thank you," Clara's mother said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for being there when I could not be. Thank you for seeing my daughter. Thank you for not looking away." Wraith, who did not do well with emotions, who preferred action to words, hugged her back. "She saved herself," he said quietly. "She had the courage to ask for help. That is the hardest part. I just answered the call." "Still," Clara's mother said, "thank you." That night, Bishop and Iron and several other Grim Reapers members came into the bar, and Clara's mother got to meet the brotherhood that had protected her daughter. They shared stories, not about violence or revenge, but about the code they lived by. Protect the innocent, honor the brave, show up when it matters. Clara's mother left that night with a different understanding of the world. She understood that safety did not always come from the expected places, that heroes did not always look like heroes, and that sometimes the people society feared were the ones who did the protecting. A year after the incident at the Route 66 diner, Clara Evans graduated from nursing school. She had gone back to her classes, finished her degree, and passed her licensing exam on the first try. The day she walked across that stage to receive her diploma, 43 members of the Grim Reapers MC sat in the audience, their leather vests standing out among the suits and dresses of the other families. When Clara's name was called, when she walked across that stage, The Grim Reapers stood as one and cheered. It was loud and unrestrained, and probably violated some kind of graduation ceremony protocol. But Clara did not care. She looked out at them, at Wraith in the center with his scarred hands clapped together, and she thought about how far she had come. She thought about the terrified girl who had written a desperate note on the back of a receipt, betting her life on the kindness of a stranger who looked like a nightmare. She thought about the window shattering, about the motorcycles in the rain, about being given a second chance at life. She thought about Sarah Thorne, whose death had taught her brother to notice suffering, whose legacy was still saving lives years later. After the ceremony, Clara walked over to where the Grim Reapers had gathered in the parking lot. Wraith stood slightly apart from the group, looking uncomfortable in the daylight, in civilian spaces, among so many people. "You came," Clara said. "Of course we came," Wraith replied. "You are family. This was important." Clara pulled something from her purse, a small photograph in a silver frame. It was the picture Wraith had shown her at the bar, the one of Sarah smiling. He had let Clara borrow it months ago to make a copy, and she had done more than that. She had had it professionally restored, the creases smoothed, the colors enhanced, the image made as perfect as modern technology could manage. "This is for you," Clara said, handing it to him. "So when you carry her with you, she looks the way she deserves to be remembered. Beautiful, whole, loved." Wraith took the frame, looked down at his sister's restored face, and for the first time since Clara had known him, she saw tears in his eyes. "She would have liked you," he said quietly. Sarah believed in people being kind to strangers. She believed that small acts of compassion could change the world. You proved her right. "We both did," Clara said. "I asked for help. You gave it. That is how the world changes. One person at a time, one act of courage at a time, one decision to not look away." Bishop walked over then, carrying a box wrapped in simple brown paper. "From the club," he said, handing it to Clara. "Congratulations on your graduation." Clara opened the box. Inside was a leather vest identical to the ones the Grim Reapers wore, but instead of patches and club insignia, the back was embroidered with a single image, a pair of angel wings surrounding a heart, with the words "Honorary Sister" stitched beneath in silver thread. "You do not have to wear it," Bishop said, "but we wanted you to know that you are part of this family, always. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, if you need help, we answer. That is the promise we made the night we met you, and it is a promise we keep forever." Clara put on the vest. It fit perfectly. It felt right. She looked at the assembled Grim Reapers, at these men and women who had given her back her life, and she felt something she had not felt in years. Belonging. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for saving me, for believing me, for giving me a chance to become who I was meant to be. I will never forget what you did for me." "We will never forget what you taught us," Wraith said. "You reminded us why we do this, why we watch, why we protect. Because sometimes, all the difference in the world is someone being there when it matters, someone breaking through the window, someone refusing to let the predators win." As the sun set over Tulsa that evening, Clara Evans stood in the Ponath parking lot of her nursing school, surrounded by her mother, her professors, and 43 members of the Grim Reapers Motorcycle Club, wearing a vest that declared her part of a brotherhood she had earned through courage and crisis. She thought about Brad Gower, currently serving 7 years in state prison for attempted sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment, about how his wife had divorced him, how his name had become synonymous with predatory abuse in Tulsa, how his failure had saved other women from suffering what he had planned for her. She thought about the Route 66 diner, which had been sold to new owners who installed security cameras and instituted a policy that no one closed alone. Ever. about how her story had become legend in the service industry, about how countless other workers had found courage in knowing that sometimes strangers do care, that sometimes help does come. She thought about Sarah Thorne, whose death had created purpose from pain, whose memory lived on in every person Wraith protected, whose legacy was measured not in years, but in lives saved. And she thought about herself, about the girl who had slept in her car and been so afraid and so alone, about how that girl had found the courage to write 4 desperate words on the back of a receipt, about how that single act of courage had changed everything. From that moment forward, Clara Evans dedicated her nursing career to working with survivors of assault and abuse. She became a trauma nurse, someone who understood what it meant to be believed, to be seen, to be rescued when the world had looked away. She trained other healthcare professionals on how to recognize the signs of domestic violence, workplace harassment, and exploitation. She created protocols for helping vulnerable patients escape dangerous situations. And every year, on the anniversary of the night Wraith broke through the window, Clara returned to the site of the old Route 66 diner with the Grim Reaper's MC. They held a memorial for Sarah Thorne and for all the people who had not been saved, who had not had someone watching, who had not found their moment of courage or had it answered. They called it the Night of Glass and Grace, and every year more people came. Survivors shared their stories. Advocates discussed resources, and the Grim Reapers renewed their promise. We protect those who serve with honor and kindness. We show up when it matters. We refuse to look away. The world is full of Brad Gowers, of people who exploit power and prey on vulnerability. But the world is also full of wraiths, of people who carry their scars and their grief and transform them into protection for strangers. The world is full of Clara Evanses, of people who find courage in their darkest moments and bet everything on the hope that someone will answer. And sometimes, when the windows shatter and the motorcycles roar and the brotherhood arrives in force, that bet pays off. Sometimes the predator faces justice. Sometimes the vulnerable are lifted up. Sometimes the girl sleeping in her car becomes a nurse who saves lives. Sometimes 4 words on the back of a receipt become the beginning of a new chapter. Sometimes someone is watching. Someone is waiting. Someone is ready to break through the glass. And that makes all the difference. Where are you right now? What city, what state, what country? Drop it in the comments, because this story is not just about Tulsa. It is about everywhere. It is about every workplace, every parking lot, every locked door, every moment someone needs help and wonders if anyone will come. Tell us where you are. Share this story. Make sure people know that brotherhood exists, that protection is possible, that asking for help is not weakness but courage. Have you ever been in a situation where you needed help? Have you ever been the person who helped? Share your story. Honor the Clara Evanses and the Wraiths and the Sarah Thornes of the world. Let people know they are not alone. Because the truth is, predators operate in darkness. They rely on silence and fear and isolation. But when we share these stories, when we light up the darkness, when we show that people do help and justice does come, we take away their power. So share this. Tag someone who needs to hear it. Comment with your location. Be part of the community that refuses to look away. Be part of the brotherhood that shows up when it matters. And if you are someone trapped right now, someone scared and alone and wondering if anyone will help, remember Clara Evans. Remember that she wrote 4 words and gambled everything on a stranger. Remember that he came back. Remember that the glass shattered and the motorcycles arrived and justice was served. Remember that you are not alone. Someone is watching. Someone is waiting. Someone is ready to answer. You just have to ask. Thank you for watching this story. Thank you for being part of this community. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in justice. Share this with someone who needs hope. And remember, the world is full of reapers who protect, of people who refuse to let the vulnerable suffer alone. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and know that somewhere out there, someone is watching over you. Because that is what brotherhood means. That is what family does. That is what the Grim Reapers promised Clara Evans on a rainy November night in Tulsa. And they always keep their promises.